Sure. Go ahead.
I want to ask you about the U.S. munitions stockpile.
I don't even know who's speaking because I wasn't looking at you. You can ask a question and then I'll go to you.
I want to ask you about the U.S. munitions stockpile. President Trump posted on Truth Social on Monday that the U.S. still has a good supply of weapons, but that we're not where we need to be. What does he mean by that? And does President Trump then want to ask on Congress to pass a supplemental to increase funding for missile interceptor systems like the ones being used to defend U.S. bases in the Middle East from Iranian missiles?
I don't have any updates for you on congressional asks from the president. As you know, under this president, we have significantly increased our defense budget, which is a good thing for the United States, for our national security, and for protecting our homeland. With respect to munitions, ammunition, weapon stockpiles, the United States of America has more than enough capability to not only successfully execute Operation Epic Fury, but to go much further. And we have weapon stockpiles in places that many people in this world don't even know about. However, the president in that post was pointing out that unfortunately we had a very stupid and incompetent leader in this White House for 4 years who gave away many of our best weapons for nothing, for free, to another country very far away by the name of Ukraine. So the president was pointing out how that was an unwise decision, but nevertheless, don't doubt the strength and the might of the American military.
Forget the fighter jets for a moment. Forget the explosions on television. Forget the maps showing missiles flying across the Middle East. Because the real story behind this war is not the bombs. It's the bill. Wars are not just fought with weapons. They are fought with money, factories, supply chains, stockpiles, and the ability to replace what you burn through. And once you start looking at the Iran war through that lens, once you stop watching the war like a highlight reel and start looking at it like a balance sheet, the picture becomes much clearer and much more dangerous.
We haven't. We're giving weapons, but we've given so many weapons. But we are giving weapons, and we're working with them and trying to help them. But we haven't. You know, Biden emptied out our whole country giving them weapons, and we have to make sure that we have enough for ourselves.
Right now, the United States and its allies are fighting one of the most technologically advanced air campaigns in modern history. In the first week alone, more than 2,000 strikes were carried out against Iranian military infrastructure, missile bases, and command centers. The Pentagon has deployed roughly 200 fighter aircraft into the region: F-15S, F-16S, F-18S, A-10 attack aircraft, and the newest F-35 stealth fighters. 2 aircraft carriers, the USS Gerald R. Ford and the USS Abraham Lincoln, are operating in the theater alongside destroyers, submarines, reconnaissance aircraft, and drone squadrons. Nearly 50,000 US service members are positioned across bases in Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia.
Stacey, I want to talk about munitions. This is something that we've seen a lot written about in the last 48 hours, really, about the concern of, does the US have enough stuff for a 4-week war, as President Trump has indicated this could be. How do you feel about where the American stockpiles are?
Depends which munitions you're talking about. It varies. So the 2 categories of munitions that I'm worried about are air defense interceptors. We've already seen that the Navy and the Army have burned through huge numbers of those in the prior sort of Iranian attacks on Israel and on US forces in the Middle East. Supposedly about 25% of the THAAD global ever made inventory stockpile. So with the 12-day war, so that's a lot. Yep. Then there's long-range standoff munitions, so like the TLAMs, if we're firing JASM, ARGM to go after air defense radars. Those are things that we have reasonable stockpiles of, but not nearly enough for what we need if we're thinking about the Indo-Pacific and a big war with China.
From a military perspective, the United States still holds the advantage. Iran's air defenses have been severely degraded. Its missile launch tempo has dropped sharply from the opening days of the conflict. In the first phase of the war, Iran launched hundreds of ballistic missiles and more than 1,000 drones. But within days, those numbers dropped dramatically. Ballistic missile launches falling roughly 86%, and drone launches dropping by about 73% compared to the first day of the war. On the surface, that sounds like victory.
Oh my God.
But that's where the deeper story begins, because every missile intercepted, every drone shot down, every sortie flown, and every bomb dropped carries a price tag. And those price tags add up faster than most people realize. Take the air campaign alone. A single hour of flight time for an F-35 stealth fighter costs roughly $35,000 to $40,000 in operational expenses. A long-range bomber mission involving aircraft like the B-2 Spirit can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars per flight, once fuel, maintenance, and logistics are included. A single Tomahawk cruise missile, often used in early strike waves, costs about $2 million each. In the opening 100 hours of the operation, analysts estimate the war was already costing the United States about $3.7 billion, or roughly $891 million per day. And that's just the beginning, because the real financial pressure in this war is not coming from the bombs being dropped. It's coming from the missiles being fired to stop incoming threats. Modern air defense is incredibly expensive. Every time an Iranian missile or drone is detected, defense systems have to respond immediately. Patriot interceptor missiles, the backbone of US and allied missile defense, cost roughly $4 million each. Advanced interceptors used in systems like THAAD can cost $12 million to $13 million per shot. Now compare that to what they are shooting down. One of Iran's most widely used weapons in this conflict is the Shahed-style drone, a simple one-way attack drone that costs somewhere between $20,000 and $35,000 to manufacture. That means a weapon costing about the price of a pickup truck can force the United States or its allies to fire a missile worth millions just to destroy it. That exchange rate matters, because in modern warfare, defense does not get to guess wrong. If a radar detects an incoming object, it must assume it could be a missile capable of killing hundreds of people. That means it gets engaged every time. And that means the defending side pays the premium. This is what military analysts call the cost imposition strategy, forcing an opponent to spend more money defending itself than the attacker spends launching the attack. And the math gets ugly quickly. The United States currently produces roughly 700 Patriot interceptor missiles per year. Stockpiles are believed to be around 1,600 missiles, though exact numbers are classified. In just a few days of conflict across the Gulf region, hundreds of interceptors may already have been used by the United States and its regional allies. Each of those interceptors costs millions, and replacing them takes time. Even if production runs at full capacity, replenishing the missiles used in a high-intensity conflict could take months or even years. This is why weapons stockpiles are suddenly becoming one of the most important economic stories of the war. The United States still has the world's most powerful military, but it also relies heavily on precision weapons, which are far more expensive and produced in far smaller quantities than the mass-produced artillery shells used in older wars. That means the United States has incredible firepower, but it also has a high burn rate. And when the burn rate gets high enough, the economic side of the war begins to matter just as much as the military side. Even the Pentagon appears aware of this pressure. Reports indicate that President Trump is meeting with major defense contractors to push them to accelerate weapons production. When the government starts calling the factories, that is usually a sign that stockpiles are being watched closely. But the war isn't only consuming weapons, it's also sending shockwaves through the global economy. Because the Middle East is not just another battlefield, it sits on top of the world's most important energy corridor. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow shipping lane between Iran and Oman, carries roughly 20% of the world's oil supply. Every day, millions of barrels of oil pass through that waterway on their way to global markets. When war threatens that route, energy markets react immediately. Oil prices have already surged as traders price in the risk of shipping disruptions. Gas prices across the United States have jumped sharply in the days following the escalation of the conflict. And those increases don't stop at the pump. When oil prices rise, transportation costs rise, shipping costs rise, food production costs rise, airline fuel costs rise, manufacturing costs rise. Eventually, everything becomes more expensive. This is how war spreads into everyday life. And the global supply chain effects are already appearing. Several major oil and gas facilities in the Gulf region have temporarily suspended operations due to security concerns. Ports in the region have faced disruptions. Shipping insurers are raising premiums for vessels traveling through the area. Even fertilizer markets are beginning to react. That matters because fertilizers are heavily dependent on energy production and shipping routes across the Middle East. Rising fertilizer prices can eventually translate into higher food prices worldwide. This is the ripple effect of war. A missile launched in the Gulf can eventually change the price of bread in Europe or gasoline in America. And then there is the broader economic uncertainty. Markets hate uncertainty. Businesses hate uncertainty. Supply chains hate uncertainty. Investors hate uncertainty. Right now, the Iran conflict has created all of it. Airspace closures across the Middle East have grounded thousands of flights. Airlines are rerouting aircraft around the conflict zone, increasing travel costs and delays. Shipping companies are reconsidering routes through the Persian Gulf, and every day the conflict continues, the risk grows that the war could expand further, pulling in additional countries, additional fronts, and additional costs. Already the war has spread beyond Iran itself.